welcome to No Movies in Hell. I'm Chris Geiger.
I'm Mufasa Scott, and today we are reviewing Blink Twice, a film that's co-written and directed by Zoe Kravitz.
Zoe Kravitz. Good for her.
Yeah, good for her. I mean, this was a big leap. I kind of went in not knowing much other than like seeing the trailer a couple times. And I don't know. What are your initial thoughts, Chris?
When we classified these in our rating card, I put it as horror. Because that's what I thought it was going in. When I make things a horror in the horror category, it makes the judgment of it a little bit softer. Because then you automatically assume that you don't have to close the loop on everything. Right? There are many questions that didn't get answered. If you classify it as a thriller, though, I kind of want those questions to be answered for me to consider it to be good. If it's a horror, you don't have to answer all the questions and I'll still be okay with it.
So you could suspend belief because it's a horror, but for thriller, you're like, no.
Yeah, because thrillers, I want like the answers. Like that's the whole thing. You're like going along. Horror, you're going because you want to be scared. And a lot of times not knowing the answers to everything is scary.
Yes, that tells me that I classified as a thriller and not a horror. And I just thought I couldn't suspend belief. I just thought that, to your point, and using your criteria, it didn't close the loop for me. There were so many outlanding questions, but also I didn't think it was a horror because it was almost like it was a situation, like a puzzle. And it's a situation that you're trying to get out of. So even with the introduction of character and like, they didn't really have a story around her, but it seemed like there were a lot of patterns and things. And also the way that this movie was cut or edited was pretty great. I actually enjoyed the editing and cutting up to probably the third act, where I was like, oh no, I'm not liking this film at all.
It's been out for a while. I don't think we're spoiling anything for anyone who would want to see it still. There were so many questions. There's the woman who works there who recognizes her and says Red Rabbit, who gives her the antidote, basically, which seems counter to her own interest because she works there. She knows that she's giving her the antidote. Also, a question for me early in the movie is, how is this older lady catching all these snakes? Like, snakes are super fast animals. Yeah, like, you can't just like, this woman's like snapping heads off of them the whole movie.
Yep. It's so funny because when I saw her and like what she was doing, and she recognized the woman, and she was self-medicating herself. So it was like she was self-medicating herself. I don't want to say she was helping her, but like, I think the main character could have leveraged the woman and the folks around to get herself out of the situation.
Also, what we know about memory is it's tricky, right? Like there's, even with people who have amnesia, they remember certain things. They don't remember other things. It's not like they're going to give you this drug that they'll know precisely what you'll forget.
Yep.
And it seems to sort of impact you as you're experiencing trauma in that moment. It'll make you forget that. But would it make you forget everything? Like, you had been on this island before. None of that seeps through. Like, where did you think you were for like a week last year?
I felt like that, I guess it wasn't a plot twist, but that part of the movie didn't make sense to me. Because it's like, okay, she sprayed herself in the morning. Was this smell in the infrastructure? Was the smell around or like in like part of the cuisine or something like that? Like, I think that would have been more interesting. Is like, okay, because it seems like there's a point in the beginning. It was like she puts on this fragrance, she forgets, but she doesn't really forget because she's like, oh, this smells great. Like, I'm going to wear this. I'm going to go see my friend. I'm going to go like chat up the other ladies. And then all of a sudden after dinner, things just go dark and you don't remember anything. But somehow you still end up safely in your bed. For me, just didn't. They're one of the many things that like just didn't line up with this. But also the fact that like I was actually very disappointed in Gina Davis for being in this film because I think that she could have had some more input into her character. Like, I get that her character is supposed to be like enabling and supportive of a terrible, horrible billionaire. But she literally runs a foundation on women in film and the ways with which there's parity and equity in filmmaking. That could have been some insight into like how to improve upon the story here. I just feel like it's been done before. I just expected, I don't know, I didn't expect anything going through, but interestingly enough, a friend of mine had texted and said, "Oh, I saw this movie. I thought it was great." And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to see that movie today." And then when I got out of the movie, I literally was like, "This movie was trash." And they wanted to know why. And I was just like, it doesn't make sense from a horror perspective, but then also it doesn't make sense in a thriller perspective either. And I couldn't go into it in text. I just said, there are a lot of fatal flaws here. It is what it is.
Right. The other thing is the ending. She's going to let this one woman who has been in cahoots with her in the last third of the movie go.
Yes.
About her life, which, okay. And then she's going to marry this guy. But is she drugging everyone then to forget? Because when you get off the island, first of all, no one will notice that there's a private island that what happens to all those people that are dead now on the island? Does no one come to say, oh, you know what? Every structure on this island is burned to the ground. The security guy, we're going to get back to him. So there's that. You burned everything down on this island. Maybe you can keep that quiet because it's privately owned. But then she goes back to the real world. She marries the millionaire tech guy who is now an idiot, or was an idiot before, but is now
a drugged.
Right. Heavily sedated idiot.
Yep.
And you become CEO of his company or his whatever, his business empire. Did you drug all of the board members? How you had no experience in tech.
Yep.
A week ago. And now a year later, you've married this guy, you're head of his business. And I guess everyone's just yeah, that makes total sense to me.
I had the same thought. I was like, I understand. It's great that there were two final girls. That's cool. But at the same time, one, you have two. They both know the truth. And they both know what's going on. So do you just think that the woman who just went through Survivor XYZ is just going to quietly walk away? Yeah, you could be CEO and be controlling the money. But at the end of the day, your roommate is missing. There are a number of casualties that are influential to the public and not, right? And I think, and I started to think oh, this is a don't worry, darling thing too, because it's the same thing. It's oh, if a woman's missing, the assumption is that no one is going to be looking for them. And it's actually, that's not true. And the movie could have taken it in that direction. So it's almost okay, you have this one woman and there's 3 people who come out alive and they're not going to explain why a whole island is on fire. And, you change the product to be, a vape pen that, makes people feel better, or there's a lot of fallacy.
Let's talk about the security guard. So the security guy is just one. The ex-Marine, yep. There's just one of him to be in charge of this whole island. In the one scene where he has the gun, he shoots someone and then he chases the next person pretty far. You still have the gun. Why would you not just shoot that second person? Why are you running after them? Or at least why aren't you trying to shoot them? Because you clearly have there's no barrier in your mind, emotionally or mentally, about killing someone. So why wouldn't you just at least try to shoot them versus chasing that second person for as long as you did? I did like that they used Christian Slater.
You know what? I was thinking, why did this man choose to do this movie? Of all movies, I was like, oh, wow, they're bringing him back. Simon Rex was in Red Rocket. Mm-hmm. Haley Joel Osment was in episode of What We Do in the Shadows. Oh, this is cool seeing all these guys coming back, and then Christian Slater's in it. And then I'm like, why did you choose this role?
I was happy to see Christian Slater in it, mostly just as a like nostalgia kick. To me, he's always dark comedy. So that was fun. I like that they named the main character Slater. In the trailer, that going in, I thought it was going to be more about the cultural memory loss that we all have of like, are you having a good time? Are you having, like, if you're at a party or you're at an event, people are always asking you if you're having a good time, and you're just saying yes because you don't want, but you don't even think about it. Like, am I having a good time? Yes, of course I'm having a good time. I'm having a good time always. Like they hit that really hard in the trailer. And so I thought that was going to be the crux of the movie. And it really wasn't in there very much at all.
Yeah. It was just like a passing phrase. And it's like, no, actually, this really could have been built upon, because it's like that self-assurance of like, oh, is this cool enough?
Right. Or like being in a horrible situation, but continuing to be like, are you having a good time? Yep. Having a good time. Yep. Without necessarily being drugged.
Yes, exactly.
Just having your own like mental cognitive dissonance of, yeah, of course I'm having a good time. Oh, Alia Shankar. Love to see her. So she is in another movie that's coming out pretty soon. I just saw a trailer for that yesterday. And it was like, yes, I love seeing her and stuff.
Was it Search Party? Was great. Yeah, it's on HBO. I can't say that I had high hopes walking in. I thought that it looked pretty stylish from the trailer, but yeah, I had so many questions, and I'm like, it's fine.
Right. It did sort of remind me a little bit of The Menu. Like you're on this island, there's only one way on and off. Like it's very controlled environment, but everything is very upscale.
But The Menu was like, it was so carefully thought out because it was, the haves and have nots. Like these people in The Menu impacted the chef in a way. And it was his way as he was getting rid of everything. And it was about class and status. Whereas this one was just, the idea was about class and status and how like forgiveness and things. But at the end of the day, violence against women is like the most gutter thing that you could do. It was like actually incomprehensible to me that like this would happen in such a way because it was just really egregious. It was like there was no point. If it were to be a movie where, there's billionaires and they wanted to be forgiveness and da-da-da and all this other stuff, then the solution isn't a mind-altering fragrance. That's like, it has to be something else.
Oh, that's the other thing. So the psychologist who comes to the island, there is an exposition scene where Channing Tatum Slater is telling the psychologist how it works. Like, oh, and this, we grow this flower on the island and it's the only place it grows, but this like makes people forget. And it's like, but you're the psychologist. Didn't you teach? Like,
Yep.
Now I'm confused.
Yeah, wouldn't he be the one to tell him that?
Right.
Or a chemist?
Right. I like how, that part didn't make sense either. I do feel like props to Zoe for getting this made. It was very stylish, and there were some good points from a production standpoint, for sure. And a lot of effort clearly went into this. I think she had like grains of ideas. Like I wanted to say something about cancel culture. I want to say something about how there are groups of people in society who get away with things because of their position and how the world views them. And there are other groups of people who like work as caterers and they don't get away with as much stuff, but they're like, basically fodder. And so I think there were grains of ideas definitely that could be explored and were worth putting into a movie altogether. I just don't think we got the connective tissue to make it all happen in this one.
I agree.
But maybe in the second one she does.
Yeah. No, I appreciate what she tried to do and the vision, but I think the execution just wasn't there. I mean, I felt like one plot was these women were of low society, or they were looking for a billionaire or someone to rescue them in a way. It's because like, oh, they were caterers, or someone who's on reality TV or model or something like that. And it's like, oh, well, I just saw someone in a coffee shop and they invited me to private jet. It's like, and the competition amongst women. And I was like, well, that's not necessarily true in all factors. I think it's very blanket generalization, whereas the men got the highly specific types of roles and characters that defined who they were. And we knew more about them than even the women. Like, we just knew like two were cater waiters and one was a person on reality TV and one was, it was like they were invisible. And it's like, well, if you want to elevate them at the third act or even the second act, when you're trying to elevate them, when it becomes the aha moment, they still didn't have like that depth of a background. So it was just kind of like, oh, well, your background, whatever. And then it goes to the point that you made earlier. If someone is Rando is a CEO now of a company, they would be tearing it apart, tearing her apart, because there would be no backstory, no this, no that. There would be lots of challenges. And I would, in a board, would have an issue with just getting somebody. So like exploring that pipeline would be great. And I know that, I guess, horror movies are typically a tight 90 minutes, but there could be some more character depth for the women as well.
For sure. Let's go to the slides.
Oh, yeah.
Although I think we've already said everything.
I feel like, oh my gosh, we hit on all the points.
Because I gave this story a 2, because from a horror perspective, I was looking at it from this lens. It's an average horror movie.
Yeah. But I just thought it was like I just thought it was like so much, for me, I thought it was like more of a thriller, because it just took me out of a scary moment. Like I guess the horror was in the behavior, but then it was like, well, how are you going to get out of the situation? Like, how are you going to solve for something? And then it was apparent that there really wasn't much to solve for.
I do tend to attribute horror as the genre to things. I think we've done this before, where I've said something was a horror and you've said it was a thriller. And I think because I feel like everyday life is horrifying. Like the fact that this exists, right? That there is a section of like the society that can get away with this, and not specifically this, but gets away with things like this in reality. That's horrifying to me. And so the bringing it to light in a movie like this, it doesn't have to be scary in that sense. And scary in the sense of, oh, this is actually happening and is true. Or is highly believable. If I had put this in the context of a thriller, I would have given it much lower marks. Like, it would have been probably a 10.
Yeah. I mean, the first half an hour were pretty cool. Like, I thought, oh, there are a lot of interesting cuts and edits and sounds and things. And this looks like this is super stylish. And then it was like, okay, the polish is off. Like, where's the progression in the story? And then it was just like, oh, and you had plenty of time to like introduce these characters and their ambitions and who they are and their background. And it just seems like, well, if it just all gets burned to the ground anyway, the understanding is that nobody cares about these.
Do you have anything to plug in this episode?
Yeah, I guess it's now fall movie season. So we got Beetlejuice coming up. Didi. Oh, I'm missing so many things.
I just feel like there's a lot out, but we're also in this like lull a little bit before maybe the big fall movies come out.
That's true. Like November, Ridley Scott, Kid, new Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh, right. Megalopolis.
Yeah. I think that's towards the end of the month.
How do you feel about The Wild Robot? I feel like you're going to see that.
I might. I've seen a trailer for it. I think it looks interesting. Yeah, if there's time permitting. How about yourself?
I think it looks cute. I do. Like, of all the animated movies recently, I feel like this one looks cute. I do not want to see Mufasa.
Yeah, I don't know yet.
Yeah. What else? I want to see A Different Man when that comes out. I want to see The Substance when that comes out. The Favorite is playing at Metrograph next week. So I'm going to see that on the big screen, which I have not seen it yet. So I'm excited about that. What else? I guess that's it for now. I've been watching a lot of shows on my small screen recently. I finished Warrior, 2 seasons of Hacks. I started watching The Detectorists. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't. Is that on HBO?
I watch Roku channel. It's free, but I heard about it because I was looking up things that Toby Jones is in because I really like him.
Okay.
And he is in this show, which is about people who are metal detector hobbyists. And they don't call themselves metal detectors because the device that they use is a metal detector. They are detectorists.
Okay.
And so it's a very like quiet but cute sort of British sitcom, I guess. It's not like laugh out loud funny, but it's just like, oh, that's funny.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's
like that sounds cool.
Yeah, like a cute background show to have on.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.